Recently, some journalism has broken out at Fox News. I know, right? That sounds crazy, but it's true. First, Megyn Kelly actually asking tough questions during the last Republican debate, and now, as I'll show you, Chris Wallace. On Fox News Sunday morning, Chris Wallace decided to spank Ted Cruz like a little child over some of his ridiculous claims about Obamacare. You're going to have to watch this to believe it.
We have seen now in 6 years of Obamacare that it's been a disaster. It is the biggest job killer in this country. Millions of Americans have lost their jobs, have been forced into part-time work, have lost their health insurance, have lost their doctors, have seen their premiums skyrocket.
But, Senator, the fact checkers say you're wrong. Since that law went into effect, the unemployment rate fell from 9.9% to 5%, as 13 million new jobs were created, and 16.3 million people who were previously uninsured now have coverage. Now, don't get me wrong. There are plenty of problems with Obamacare, but more people have jobs and health insurance than they did before Obamacare.
Chris, the media fact checkers are not fair and impartial. They are liberal editorial journalists, and they have made it their mission to defend Obamacare.
Oh, not fair and impartial, right? Not fair and impartial. That's what he says. Oh, that liberal media. Those pesky liberal fact checkers using your goddamn pesky facts. You can't just make up facts, right? That's the great thing about facts, actually, is that you can't make them up. And they're true whether or not you want them to be true, right? So the facts are 13 million more jobs and more people with health insurance. Those are facts. The health insurance law, once again, is not perfect. That's a fact. It's also a big giveaway to private health insurance corporations. That is also a fact. So now that we've established some facts here, let's get back to Ted Cruz, who's eventually going to get a little testy.
Wait a minute. There's certainly no question that more people have jobs and more people have health insurance coverage.
Yes, there is question. Number one, we have the lowest percentage of Americans working today of any year since 1977. That's a fact.
But there have been 13 million jobs created, sir. That's a fact.
The fact is that from 2008 to today, we've seen economic growth of 1.2% on average.
But, sir,
Chris, don't interrupt me, and I'll give an answer.
That's changing the subject. 13 million new jobs have been created.
And that is an historically slow rate of job creation. If you look at what has occurred in any previous year, you know, Obama's the first president never to have a year of 3% economic growth. Millions of people in this country are hurting. And one of the problems is you've got the elite, the Washington elite. The rich have gotten richer under Barack Obama. The top 1% earn a higher share of our income than any year since 1928. But working men and women are hurting.
What is this guy trying to do? Be Bernie Sanders or something? Seriously. But anyway, so let's get back to what he said in the first part. All right. So first, I like that Chris Wallace was kind of handing him his ass there. Hey, you're changing the subject. Why are you changing the subject? These are facts. Let's talk about facts. Don't change the subject. Oh, I'm not changing the subject. Okay, yeah, sure. So basically, Ted Cruz wants to make the case that Obamacare is a job killer. Now, if you want to do that, you'll probably want to ignore the inconvenient truth of 13 million jobs being created. Now, the labor participation rate, now that's actually a very involved discussion with actually a lot of different factors. So obviously, Ted Cruz is going to bring it up without any nuance at all. Now, these factors that actually contribute to this labor participation rate, include things like education, more people going back to college, women dropping out of the workforce, and of course, retirement and disability levels. Now, in fact, a 2014 report from Shigeru Fujita at the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia pointed out that disability and retirement between 2000 and 2013 accounted for a 65% reduction in the labor participation rate. That's a huge reduction. All of that is just people going on and getting retiring. The baby boomers are retiring. More people retiring, you've got less people in the workforce. Oh, well, that's simple math. Doesn't have anything to do with Obamacare. Nothing whatsoever. Now, while about 80% of the decline in the participation rate since the first quarter of 2012 is also accounted for due to retirement. So now even more people are retiring. And yet you're going to blame the drop in the labor participation force, which has been huge, on Obamacare, when mostly it's people either becoming disabled or retiring. Really? That's bullshit. That's absolute nonsense. So on to the growth, right? Now, I don't know if Ted Cruz realizes this, but if you continuously block every single jobs bill that's ever come up, well, you're going to create slow growth. You're going to slow growth. Or at least not help with encouraging growth after the greatest recession that we've had since the Great Depression. Okay? That was a financial crisis back in 2008. I think some people forget about that and forget that we're at that time we were hemorrhaging over 800,000 jobs a month. And we are losing lots and lots of growth. Now it's starting to recover. Could it be better? Absolutely. Would it have helped if the Republicans hadn't blocked every single thing? Probably. So there's those inconvenient facts. Now we've got more. So remember the government shutdown. Ted Cruz, who led the government shutdown. Remember, he gave the filibuster that wasn't really a filibuster in order to shut down the government. Well, that cost us $24 billion in revenue. And it reduced fourth quarter GDP growth from 3% to 2.4%. So now let's talk about who's to blame for the slow growth of the economy. It seems like you and the Republican Party are taking every opportunity to go out of your way to make sure that less people work, ironically putting more people on government dependence, and slowing the growth of the economy, once again screwing over regular people so you can play your politics. So now on to who's to blame for the rich getting richer. Well, it just turns out that, of course, Republicans and corporate Democratic hacks, well, they're the ones to blame because they only live to serve their masters. That's why we do have low growth. That's why wages are stagnant and the needs of everyday American citizens are all but ignored. And here's Ted Cruz, people like Ted Cruz, who want to take a piece of legislation which, admittedly so, has a bunch of problems, right? And is a giveaway to giant health insurance corporations. Well, they want to take that away from the people it actually helps, because it actually does help people. And see, that's something that an ideologue like Ted Cruz absolutely hates. He hates the idea of the government, through legislation, actually doing something to help regular people. So I have to give some credit to Chris Wallace for hitting Ted Cruz over his obviously ridiculous bullshit claims. Now, also on that note, I do have to mention, as a bit of an aside here, that even though I'd give Fox News credit on some of its recent reporting, for example, Megyn Kelly, for example, Chris Wallace, right, I do understand that when an election comes around and when people start paying attention, Fox News tends to moderate their stances just a little bit in order to not appear as openly biased. But believe me, they are openly biased. And if you don't believe me, there's evidence. There are videos, not just from me, but of course TYT, Secular Talk, David Pakman, Ring of Fire, Tom Hartman, on and on and on, that show that when the majority of people are not paying attention, like they do during an election, Fox News is not at all has no interest, they're not at all interested in doing fair and balanced journalism. So I just do have to kind of remind everybody of that.